As anybody has anything to say and wants to start a group therapy? Irina, yeah. Wait a second.
Hello, everybody. Oh, it's too strong, probably. I don't know. Can you hear me? No, thank you. I'm not an actress, and I'm not used to stay on the stage, but you can hear me. So I had a meeting which I have to leave, but I really would like to contribute with 2 points regarding the issue. And one of them is, I'm a film producer, okay. So I'm really interested in the issue. So I don't represent festivals, and I represent filmmakers like, yeah. And for us, it's extremely important to be present at festivals, of course, especially when we are newcomers. We don't have a huge career behind us with lots of films yet. And for us, it's extremely crucial to have this opportunity to be seen, to be considered, to be one of the many in consideration for selection. And I would say that there's some festivals in which I go as an audience, and there's, of course, festivals in which I go as an industry, and markets, of course, as this one, for example. And for the one in which I'm present as an industry, so I go there to know other filmmakers, to collaborate with them, probably to make a co-production or some other kind of collaboration. Then it's different. 2 points. One point is that, of course, we know that big festivals are leaders, and they make the lead with selecting some films, and then smaller festivals, or let's say A-class festivals, B-class festivals, we all know about it. So the other festivals are, let's say, forced in a way or obliged in a way to consider those films more. But do you necessarily have to put them in competition? Isn't there a way to put them out of competition in a special program, which is like dedicated for those already awarded films who made their entry in a very important festival? So there's, I don't know, I don't see from my point of view the need to put them in competition on smaller festivals when they won Locarno or Berlin or whatever else, because they already were renowned, they were already recognized, and what's the point to them to win other 70 awards from smaller festivals? Yeah, of course, it makes the whole list of many awards that you have at the end, and when you present yourself to the film commissions later for your new project, of course, it matters. But once you have already the award from the big festivals, isn't it kind of not enough, but it's still a good reputation you already had. So probably not having them in competition, but still having them on the festival in order to bring the audience, as you already brought the point. And I believe this is extremely important. But yeah, this is like another kind of approach. It can be taken into consideration. And the second point I wanted to say, it's for some festivals I have attended, and I'm, let's say, more close to the festival directors, so I know about some issues about having long list of films in the program, because otherwise they can't get some fundings in order to produce the festivals itself. And at a certain point, from my opinion, there's an extremely long list of films to this festival, and I'm, from one point of view, I really want to watch as more as possible, and then at a certain point I see films that are not at the level of others, but they're still in the same competition, and for me confusing, because this festival, in order just to get the money from the fundings, they're forced to have so many films in competition that it becomes like it loses the good point and good quality for some films, and for me this festival starts losing my attention. Of course, and some third point. For example, I live in Sofia, Bulgaria. We have like 5 or 6 festivals only in Sofia. And of course, they all want to screen the good films that have been at the major festivals, etc. But when we have Sofia Film Festival, which screens all the Berlinale and Cannes films, etc., etc., then we don't need to see them on all the other Sofia festivals because we are still the same audience. So you don't necessarily have to have the same films for the audience in the same city. I don't know whether you got my point, okay? In the smaller cities, of course, it could be the case, but in the big cities.
Good luck with the answer.
Point 1. So the thing about the screening the films out of competition, the issue with that is to screen a film out of competition, the filmmaker should get a screening fee. And then suddenly the costs rack up for the festival. I'm not saying that's an excuse. I'm not saying that's why the competition programs are so big. But realistically, by putting a film in, it's the agreement between the festival and the filmmaker that we're not giving you a screening fee because your film is in competition and it could potentially win a cash prize. If we take those big films and we give them a screening fee, you know, this gets us onto the subject of every short film panel discussion where we talk about premiere policies and screening fees. We haven't done submission fees yet. It becomes difficult to operate as a festival. It becomes difficult because the sheer number of films that we need to be talking about. So there's a slight problem there about screening these films out of competition. You know, would the filmmakers want to screen their film at a festival if it's not in competition? That's you know, they maybe find that they've just won a big prize in Locarno, or they screened in Locarno, or anything like that, or Berlin, or Venice, or something. But would they would probably still want to be in competition. They probably still haven't recouped all the money back from when they made the film, the cost of making the film. So they would probably still be interested in getting that prize money. And if you gave them the... Exactly, yeah. The thing regarding the number of films and the quotas, you know, that's the way funding is at the moment. I would love it to be different. I would love not to have to be on a quota and have to screen so many films in competition. But then, again, that's what those films in competition means. Those filmmakers come, and you know, and the quality of the films in competition is down to the individual festival. But it's, you know, getting back to a point I made earlier, is that, you know, the industry we get in attendance at encounters is the filmmakers. And as much as when we're curating the festival program, we're actually curating who our industry audience is going to be, which filmmakers are going to be there, which filmmakers we can potentially introduce to each other and build a new collaboration. You know, what can they learn from each other? What would they develop? So, you know, the idea the festival happens in the cinema is one idea, but, you know, I like to think the festival happens outside the cinema. The thing you said about the conversations, showing those controversial films, see what conversations that happen, that's what a festival is about. And that's why sometimes screening more films in competition means creating more of a network of people, of potential collaborators who are in the room that could potentially move on and do something interesting. I've forgotten the third point, I'm sorry, but I'm just going to say yes.
I would like to comment on the competition, the number of competitions and films in competition, because I'm very sorry if you have to be a slave to the number of competitions for funding. Luckily, we don't. Nobody cares about how many competitions we show. They just care how many films we show, and that's a difference because we're fairly free. I mean, I'm very critical of our competition program, but you know, or self-reflective afterwards, because you're always kind of critical of your work. But what I can say is that because we discuss this every year in the selection committee, how many programs are we going to make? How many competitions are we going to make? Are we just going to show the films in the competition that we really believe in, that should win an award? So are we going to keep it down at 6 competition programs in the international competition? Or are we going to give more films or filmmakers the opportunity to win an award? Or how are we? It's a discussion we have every year. But what we decide on most is we want to, all 5 of us in the committee, we want to stand behind the program. And this narrows down the competition, of course. And what I wanted to say earlier as well, because you mentioned there are like 15, 20,000 films being made a year, short films. I don't know how many, but I think we also have to talk about the quality of films. Because I'm sorry if I'm offending anyone now, but from our submissions, I tend to say that 80% of our submissions are not made for our competition. I'm going to put it a bit more nicely. They're just not up. I leave that up to you to swear. No, they're just not up to scratch. I mean, I don't want to sound arrogant, but they're just not made for our competition program, and it's maybe we have to talk about the quality of the films. How many really, really good short films are out there, actually, or because I 16, because I mean, personally, I also usually pay attention to certain countries because I really want good films from these countries, and they're not there. What do I do if they're not there? Do I screen the film, or do I just say, no, the film is not good enough, we can show it in a side program, but it's not for the competition? I think that's also, quality is important, maybe?
Absolutely. No, to mention this briefly, because we talked about it before. There was in Dr. Leipzig now this masterclass with Werner Herzog, and he said he's really, I mean, there's so many festivals out there, and it's really a pity because there's only 4 good films made every year. So what should they show? But of course, this is a bit provocative. But it's true. I think this is also something, I mean, talking about screening fees and how big should a competition be. Our competition is only 25 films, so we tried the international one, so we try to keep it as small as possible and as high class as possible. But at the same time, of course, you miss a lot of films that you would love to present as well, and then it also gets a bit difficult if you have to pay for them, but although we try.
But just to come back to a point there as well, it's like if there is a limited number of good films, then surely we're all going to be screening the same films again. So, but then there's also that thing about short film festivals, you know, sometimes we don't program the best films. Sometimes it's not about selecting the best films. Sometimes it's about selecting the best films for that audience, or for the ones that would get the most relevance out of coming to your festival or being at your festival. Well, you know, we quite often program films that, you know, aren't brilliant. Knowing, I'm being careful. This festival's good, trust me. But there's something about it, something about that film where they've tried something different that the audience of filmmakers will look at and go, I'll take that idea and I'll take it somewhere else. I'll do something else with it. I'll try and do this. I'll try and do that. Sometimes it's about that. So if we were just screening the best films, if that was our job as festivals to pick the best films, make a top 10, top 20, you know, then I think that does a real disservice to what the festival industry is about and what festivals are about.
At the end of the day, it's also very subjective. What is the best film? So it's generally depending on the people who select the films, who decide which is the best film. It's not necessarily the best film in the program, because the program also has to fit together, and you know, it's
beginning of the discussion again.
Yeah, and I mean, it's very important questioning this, because as you said at the very beginning, or Daniel said, okay, you screen an horror film, short film, and people get crazy, say wow, and then you film a competition film and you see the face of people going out from the cinema and say, yeah, yes, I did another competition, yes, I did do only one competition for a day because it's tough, you know. So it's also what the audience, your own audience, and the audience change in every country. I mean, I program for different country, different festival in different country, and they don't program the same film at all, because there is some film, we were talking about O Willy before, for example. There is a dog, nice. No, it's you? No. No, it was someone over. I thought it was a dog.
Ben. It's just Ben. Don't worry.
Yeah.
It's just Ben.
So if you film is objectively a good film, it's okay. But I mean, there is also what the audience want to see. It's very often not the film that ended in a competition from some festival, not yours, I know. But, and it's happened. I mean, I was working in festival where audience, I mean, they ran to see the auto competition program and they were very happy. And then it was painful for them to watch a competition. And I mean, and this is really, but it's general for film. Why we are now talking a lot about Netflix and stuff like that. Netflix gives to people what they want, mostly. And then as people complain, there is this tortured director that with the red scarf that go on stage and say, nobody go to watch my film in the cinema. Yes, because you don't know how to talk with, how to reach the audience. You have very different discussion. Then the film, it's very important that it exists, but this is another thing. I mean, there is a very big problem in targeting and knowing your audience and do also a selection that is good for your audience. And I mean, I'm a programmer, I'm not doing programming film for myself. I watch 2,000 films for a year, and my tastes are totally different probably with someone that watched 3 films for a year. So also know this, it's very, very important. And I think that there are some colleagues, there are some festivals that they forget sometimes this, that there is not there all small, let's say, personal and private things. It's a festival that you do mostly for reaching some other people to share and communicate something to the others. And you have to reach, ideally, the bigger number as possible of persons when you do something like that.
Some questions or issues, and I would go this. We listen to your thoughts, and then you can reply. So, Daniel, if you want to take notes, as you do.
Thank you. Hi. My name is Nicholas. I'm a cinematographer and I'm a producer based in London. And I was wondering very briefly if you could maybe give us your ideas on a topic that hasn't really been brushed upon much in the discussion. And to introduce a brief anecdote, I have a good friend who just finished his first feature and premiered at Locarno. And he went to Locarno and he found out he was a bit of a celebrity there because he was the film that had made it through the online application process. Every other film there, apparently, didn't get in through what all of us consider to be the sort of the way to, you apply to the application process and you could get considered and maybe you get in, maybe you don't. But so there seems to be like a lot of filmmakers like myself feel like we're circling around the citadel waiting for a gap, and we hear stories that people that made it through the gap, and I wonder if you care to comment on this idea that connections are very important in the film industry, and I understand also the logic of like programmers and festivals need to make sure they stay relevant, and therefore the safety of the bet I understand the logic of, but maybe in regards to short film, what Massimiliano's post seemed to suggest was a frustration for similar mechanisms applying to short films, which I think was Rich saying it should be the R&D of filmmaking.
Thank you. Second.
Can we first answer the question?
If you want.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I think you have to really differentiate between feature film and short film. So I think, I don't know much about feature film festivals, but I think the selection process is a totally different one. Short films, they do, all our submissions are nowadays online, and you have to be in the online submission platform to be considered, because our selection committee has to watch the films. There are different ways to get into it. Of course, you can either just submit the film, or, of course, I mean, we travel around festivals, and I do watch good films that I would love for our festival to be considered in any form. So we, of course, ask the filmmakers or the producers or whoever to submit their films. But they can only be considered if they are in this platform. And like I said before, our selection committee is quite independent. Most of the time, they don't know about the background of the film. They don't know where it comes from. They just see it in the platform. They watch it. it's every film gets watched by several people, so that's how it works for us. So I disagree. Yeah.
I think we can. I mean, I would suppose that it's the same with you guys and the same with us. I mean, of course, we invite filmmakers to submit their films, but in the end, the selection process is a very clear one. Everything that has been submitted has to be watched. It's more than 4,000 films that are that we get submitted every year, and from when we select 25 films, in the end, of course, it's a very, very tight race. And in what we do consider is that we try to have not too many films in the competition that have already been at other festivals. So at least we try to have a quota like this, because of course we also want to stay relevant in a way of in discovering new things. So.
I can comment on this as myself. Like working as advisor at Venice Film Festivals, I've watched basically alone thousands of films, and usually I received, as you know, it was like said before, lots of films are not fit for the festival. Let's say theme or thematic, whatever you call it, as you want. And so if I receive a film from somebody that I know and that I trust, then usually I stop watching the submissions to watch that film, because usually, not always, but usually it's a film that might interest me because people know what we are looking for. So it's something that, it's a matter of trust. So it's a matter of trust in this business. So it's not about having friends or just like pushing friends, but in that sense, it's just like if you trust somebody that has the same, but that knows what you're looking for, then it just it before the others. But then in the end, the decision making, as you know, I think everybody agrees, is like fair. So you just consider good films. Then selections are complex stuff, I would say. So in that sense, it might happen that a good film is cut for several reasons. So that's it. That was my comment. But now we go on with another question.
Well, it's a comment, if I may. We're talking about short films, right? So they have a fairly small distribution, especially in my country. I don't know about other countries, but in Italy, short films are really not seen, actually. So the festival is a distribution network for short films. I can assure you, people don't know filmmakers. They don't know the names, so they don't see the names coming back. Sometimes, occasionally, in our own experience, it's a small festival, the one I work for. And we try to keep the list down to about 22 international films, or almost the same number for Italian films. And we have on the side a program of feature film, which helps us to get the audience, so that we can educate our audience to see short films. So to have a synergy between the two things. And it works to a certain point. But then it depends on the submissions you get. That's important. Some filmmakers prefer to submit to Locarno, which takes place at the same time as our festival, and not submit to us. But we get a lot of submissions all the same, so we have a choice to make. The choice we make is we want to give emotions to people, because in the end we talk about cinema. We don't talk about, just an experiment we make. We want to educate people to good films, to good cinema. And plus, the filmmakers, they will do 3, 4, maybe 4 shorts before going into feature films. So it's also, if you get the same name, means that person is developing as a filmmaker. So I don't think that's really a bad thing. A bad thing is if you have friends and you get somebody in the list just because there's a friend. But that doesn't work for anybody. I mean, it can work one time, maybe, but not the next one. And it's true that sometimes we get films from other festivals, Berlin, and it depends also on the timing, when your festival is taking place, how long it is before you close, you call for entries. There are a lot of factors that come into play. So I think it's interesting to see the same discussion. We have the same discussion every year when there is this election to be made. And then there is also a question of platforms, for example, use platforms for submissions. If the platform is free, you get a lot of bad film. I'm sorry, I wouldn't say fit for the festival. I mean, I would clearly say bad films, a lot of bad films. So, and we wanted that to be free so that it's more democratic, so that young filmmakers who don't have any money can apply, can submit. But you have to make a choice. I mean, you have limited resources, so maybe a little fee will discourage people who are just making a film with their mobile of the kids playing in the playground and submit that to the festival. So I think there are a lot of different things to be considered.
I would, from my point of view, no, the 60 euros fee doesn't do that. So people still send films that are not interesting. So yeah. Anybody wants to reply?
Yeah, I'd just like to point out for anyone playing short film panel bingo, we're now on submission fees. So that's everything covered for a short film panel. It's right. Submission fees are a thing. I mean, I've stopped calling them submission fees. It's a viewing fee. You're paying someone to watch the film. It's a job. You're watching the number of films being made now. Someone has to sit and watch the films, whether they're good, they're bad, in the middle. Someone has to sit and watch it, so it's a viewing fee. I'm just keen to change that language a little bit, because submission fees are always politically, well, it just starts a conversation, doesn't it? Yeah, that's it, nothing more.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for that therapy session. I think it's super helpful and healthy for us. And also, I'm happy to see that this is some sort of like ongoing discussion. That's not, again, just one single panel on that, and then we drop it, and then at another festival we're gonna meet and talk again the same thing, but it's a process. So I'm a programmer myself with a relatively, I feel like a newbie, because it's been only 4 years for me to be in that international circuit, and I can totally relate to what you are saying, which is horrible, I think, that after 4 years you can see already the same problems. But I really realized, I think, after a little bit of time in that circuit, that we really, as film curators, we should really have some sort of code of ethics of how we work. Because sometimes, I think after a year, I discovered that sometimes all this traveling is completely useless and very unecological. And why don't we ever talk about that? You better stay at home and maybe work with your local audience, create more events within the year, or I don't know. I think that being a film programmer or film curator is not only putting altogether 15 competition programs, but also it's about writing good editorial about the films and creating some context of how we screen the films and why we screen the films, rather than just doing what everyone else does. Thank you.
I would agree. Absolutely.
Okay. Nadine?
Me too. I got a question for if you guys have tried different selection committee models, and maybe you have some thoughts about the idea of this one curator making one whole competition selection.
You mean one person only doing the competition? This one person watches all the films alone?
I mean, I guess the pre-selection process is happening in every festival from multiple people, but then, I mean, I've heard about some multiple people that have such a strong voice within their own selection committee, and of course, the more people you narrow the selection committee down, this voice will be much stronger. So maybe you have something to share in that sense. I mean, I know how you work, Anna. You were sharing that a little bit, but
no, I'm not going to talk about how we work again. Sorry.
Yeah, that's why.
No, I mean, what I think is really maybe also important for festivals. I mean, if we not just talk about the competition, but also talk about the whole program of the festival, because let's face it, the festival has a lot more to offer. I think having like personalities at your festival, or letting your personality shine through in your programs, will also create some sort of profile for your festival, and that will make it different to other festivals in that sense. I think that's maybe that sort of curatorship.
I can talk a bit about that in terms of different models. So for encounters, I have different programmers programming different strands. So we have an animation competition program, so I have an animation program. We have a live action competition program, I have a live action programmer. And that works quite nicely because you get, again, it all depends on that person having that voice or that connection, not necessarily a voice, but a connection with a festival and connection with the audience and an understanding of what they're programming for, who they're programming for. I know other models quite well. My wife programs for Locarno. Locarno has a short film committee, essentially, and they all have their specific regions that they look after, and then they all meet together with their short lists from their regions, and they try and collaborate and put something together. And yes, you know, strong voices do prevail, and I think it's about, you know, how well that team works. And if they're only meeting once a year to talk about short film, then ultimately it's going to be about personalities and strong personalities. But again, it's down to the festival, almost to the festival director, to curate the programming team and to ensure that there is a right diversity of voices. I mean, I know other festivals that have introduced models where they have several programmers who each put together one program each, you know, and sometimes that works for them, so that everyone gets their own voice within the festival. I don't think there is a model that works and that, you know, that is uniform and everyone should do that. I think it's based on the festival and the understanding of that festival audience. I mean, the more submissions you got, the lighter the load is if there's more programmers, I suppose. So I think as we move towards even more films being made, then, you know, you are going to see festivals with multiple programmers. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, as long as they're all on the same page and they understand what they're doing it for.
Let me just add it's just a brief comment. I really also don't think or don't believe in this one-person curatorship of festival. I think it's the only thing that you can reach with this is that you have a very clear profile, but I think it also is not very helpful in terms of getting a real overview about what's happening and get a grip of what is out there. I think it might be very focused, but I think it's not very helpful for a festival. And so for me, I think it would just I always think it should be at least 2 people, which could be the smallest committee. And what we try to do with our festival is that we always have at least one male and one female person to also have these 2 views combined, because I think we have way too many festivals where there's only male programmers.
I don't agree. I'm joking. No, I agree, I don't agree. I mean, I try by myself this different system. I think I work in all the possible combination, being a one-man band watching like 2,000 film alone. I work with committee. I tried the Swiss democracy with 8 programmer for a festival. I tried a small committee of 3-4 people. So in my personal experience, there is not a system that works better than the other. And in each of that, you have something that you gain and something that you lose. So it's like, it's something very, very clear. But it doesn't matter, because what you need in every case is to know your audience. I mean, it's not, I don't really believe in these things. You need a man and a woman. I don't know, because I think if you know the audience that you have in front, I think all of us are, let's say, enough life experience to also have different sensitivity to understand what an audience can feel. I mean, maybe.
You understand that you're talking from a privileged person.
Yes, of course. Yeah, of course. But every I mean, you not on the other hand, when you work in a big number of people selecting, you have always a compromise selection in some way that maybe can touch different people, more people, but at the same time, you lack of a little bit of identity. And they have some very big festival that they have this very democratic way of selecting, and then you look the competition, you watch one film after the other, and you say, what is this actually? Yeah, what the fuck is this? Or something. Yeah. So and just like you don't find any identity. So there is no better system than there is no one that's better than the other. You lose and you gain in each way. You have it.
Okay. Well, again. I'm sorry, but the group therapy session has to come to an end. This was The Usual Suspects. Big round of applause for our panelists, Massi, Daniel, Anne, and Rich. And now we're gonna have an award ceremony for our screening, market screenings, and the All You Need Is Short. So we're gonna find out who the winners are. So, and Oltrecourt, of course. Yeah, sure. So please welcome on stage Jacopo Chessa. Thank you so much, everybody.